In this video, we will explain the concepts of the owner, group, and the world, how to set the file access rights, read, write, and execute for each category, authenticate requests for file access, respecting proper permissions, use change mod to change file permissions, change owner to change user ownership, and change group to change group ownership. Help you understand the role of the UMask in establishing desired permissions on newly created files. Use ACLs to extend the simpler user group world and the read-write execute model. Let's begin. Owner, group, and world. When you do an ls-l, you will see after the first character, which indicates the type of the file object, there are 9 more which indicate the access rights granted the potential file users. These are arranged in 3 groups of the 3, the owner, group, and other. The owner, the user who owns the file, also called a user, right? The group of the users who have access. Other, the rest of the world, also called a world. File access rights. If you do a long listing of a file, as in something on the screen, you do ls-l user bin vi, you will see something like this. Each of the triples, 3 triples, right? In characters 2 to 10. Each of the triples can have each of the following sets: R, W, X. R, the read access is allowed. W, write access is allowed. X, execute access is allowed. If the permission is not allowed, a dash appears instead of one of these characters. In addition, other specialized permissions exist for each category, such as the setuid, setgid permissions. These file access permissions are a critical part of the Linux security system. Any request to access a file requires comparison of the credentials and the identity of the requesting user to those of the owner of the file. This authentication is granted depending on one of these 3 sets of permissions in the following order. 1. If the requester is the file owner permissions are used. 2. Otherwise, if the requester is in a group that owns the files, the group permissions are examined. 3. If that doesn't succeed, the world permissions are examined. Changing mod. Changing file permissions is done with the change mod. You can only change permissions on files you own unless you are the super user. There are a number of different ways to use a change mod. For instance, to give the owner and the world execute permission and remove the group or write permission, such as on the screen you do ls-l a file, or change mod uo plus x gw a file, right? ls-l a file. When U stands for user, owner, O stands for other, world, and G stands for group. Permissions can be represented either as a bitmap, usually written in octal, or in a symbolic form. Octal bitmaps usually look like a 0755, while symbolic representations look like a U plus RWX, G plus RWX, O plus RX, right? Octal digits. This symbolic syntax can be difficult to type and remember, so one often uses the octal shorthand, which lets you set all the permissions in one step. This is done with a simple algorithm, and a single digit suffices to specify all 3 permission bits for each entity. The octal number representation is the sum for each digit of 4 if the read permission is desired, 2 if the write permission is desired, 1 if the execute permission is desired. Thus, 7 means read, write, execute, 6 means read, write, and 5 means read, execute, right? So when you apply this with a change mod, you have to give a value for each of the 3 digits. Changing owner and changing group. Changing file ownership is done with the changing owner, and changing the group is done with the changing group. Only the super user can change ownership on files. Likewise, you can only change group ownership, the groups that you are a member of. Change file ownership with the change owner, only super user can do this. Sudo change owner Wally some file, right? Change group ownership with the change group, only two groups you belong to. You do sudo change group covers some file. Change both at the same time. You do sudo change owner Wally covers some file. So where you separate the owner and a group with a colon or period. Use the dash capital R option for recursive. You do sudo change owner dash R Wally covers, right? And the sudo change owner dash R Wally subdir. The dash R option ensures all files and the directories underneath the argument have their ownership changed, right? UMask. The default permissions given when creating a file are read, write for owner, group and a world 0666, and for a directory it is a read, write, execute for everyone 0777. However, if you do the following, touch a file, mkdir, adir, ls-l, grep-e, a file-e, a dir, right? You will notice that actual permissions have changed to 644 from a file and 755 for a directory. They have been modified by the current UMask, whose purpose is to show which permissions should be denied. The current value can be shown by UMask, which is the most conventional value set by system administrators for users. This value is combined with the file creation permissions to get the actual result. You can change the UMask at any time with the UMask command as in UMask 0022. File system, ACLs. POSIX ACLs, access control lists, extend the simpler user group and the world system. Particular privileges can be granted to specific users or groups of users when accessing certain objects or classes of objects. Files and directories can be shared without using 777 permissions. While the Linux kernel enables the use of ACLs, it still must be implemented as well as in a particular file system. All major file systems used in modern Linux distributions incorporate the ACL extensions, and one can use the option -ACL when mounting. A default set of ACLs is created at a system install. Use get fACL, set fACL to get a set ACLs. For example, on the screen, start with the get fACL, the home directory for Stephanie file 1, and then following choose set fACL -m and -x. Note that new file inherited the default ACL if it's set from a directory they reside in. Also note that mv and the cp-p preserve ACLs. Right? To remove an ACL, you do set fACL-x to remove one. To set a default on the directory, you do set fACL-m, right? Okay, this is the end of this video. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.